Welcome to the Oracle Scroll. My name is Kevin Walder and I am your host, and I invite you to join my guests and myself as we discuss all things metaphysical. Welcome to episode 15 of the Oracle Scroll. Today, we're going to get better acquainted with the Hanged Man and see what his energy and message is bringing to us. We're also going to talk a little bit about interdependence. In this day and age when independence is considered to be a virtue, let's talk about how interdependence can be even a greater asset. Then in our third segment, I'm going to just take you on a brief little tour of what it means to me to be a tarot consultant. So, to begin, let's jump right into the story of the Hanged Man. And I'm taking this directly from my book, Tarot for Lunch, Lessons from the Cards. And I wrote about the Hanged Man as follows. One of my favorite cards, in fact, I've sometimes said that this is my favorite card, in the major arcana is the Hanged Man. The artwork for this card varies somewhat from deck to deck, like most everything else, but most commonly it shows a man hanging from one ankle from a tree, but it will often show runes scattered on the ground beneath him, but he is obviously looking at the world from a new perspective. I look at the Hanged Man and I contemplate the new perspectives that are thrust upon us at times. There really isn't any situation that cannot be looked at from a number of directions. There really isn't any situation that cannot have its meaning adjusted or corrected by looking at it from a number of perspectives. In recent months, we've begun to analyze directions and what we will do in the future, and what we are doing is maturing, and it has caused us to turn things upside down a bit and look at things from a new perspective. Life is such that we are always given a choice. We can either choose to turn our own world upside down and look at it from a new perspective, or we can accept that someone else will be there to force us to see it from a new viewpoint. We always have the choice of being proactive in analyzing a situation or just accepting it as it comes. Neither way is inherently wrong, but being proactive can at least put us in a new position with new capabilities of directing what is needed and wanted for the future. For example, if you've ever considered the possibility that something you have thought of as one of your greatest mistakes might actually have produced one of your greatest triumphs. Sometimes a little slip-up can look like it will cause a huge problem, but in the final analysis actually only serve to clean up the situation without direct intervention. We are all faced with dozens of choices every day. Some will be menial, some will be quite momentous, but each of them needs to be considered on their own merits, and the Hanged Man reminds us that each decision we undertake can produce both positive and negative results, and we must be prepared and willing to accept both. The Hanged Man is a perfect example for us because it also can represent sacrifice and compromise. This card reminds us that in order to gain a new insight or in order to gain a new perspective, sometimes we give up a bit of control or even a bit of freedom. There are times when we are called upon to let go of something very important to us in order to gain something which is for the greater good. And this card reminds us to look at it that way, and in a way that is constructive. It reminds us to change our focus from what we lose to what we gain. Personally, the Hanged Man reminds me to step back from every situation and look at it with new eyes, to do everything within my power to remove ego from the process of decision-making. This card reminds me to be more open to new ideas and concepts and much less quick to judge or to accept negative viewpoints as fact. This card reminds me to approach every day as a new venture. What is past no longer rules, and poor choices in the past can be corrected with better choices in the future. This card also reminds me to enjoy that process, that it should never become such work that we lose the joy of gaining that new perspective. And that is what I wrote about the Hanged Man in my book, Tarot for Lunch, Lessons from the Cards. This book is now available on Amazon in both paperback and Kindle version. I mentioned earlier that the Hanged Man is what I consider to be my favorite card in the major arcana. This card speaks to me of optimism and faith, and I find that I don't make use of this energy nearly as often as I should. So today, we have the rare privilege of hearing directly from the Hanged Man and how he views his influence and energy. So please, welcome the Hanged Man as he shares his vision with us. Hello. I am grateful for this opportunity to impart a deeper understanding of my energies and my message in the structure of the tarot. The first thing which often confuses people is, well, my name. That name, the Hanged Man, it has an ominous ring to it, and anyone that is not acquainted with me personally would indicate to them that I am some sort of convicted felon, deserving of being purged from society. And nothing could be further from the truth. As you can plainly see, I'm very much alive and working within the major arcana to assist and direct any seeker whom I may encounter. All one needs to do is look at card number 12 of the major arcana of the tarot to see that the above description is completely off the mark. I am depicted as hanging from a tree by one ankle. So it isn't a life-ending scene of punishment, but rather a life-altering scene of suspense. I could stop right there, as that really is my main message, but there is more to learn from my influence. I'm often shown as the god Odin of Norse mythology, who has tossed several runes onto the ground beneath him, or me in this case, in yet another effort to see beyond this momentary suspense. In my position, I have no choice but to stop and to take a time out, gather my wits, address my surroundings, plan my next moves, and so forth. I am at once helpless and optimistic, incapacitated and empowered. And I encourage everyone to experience this captivating adventure for yourself. I am sometimes surrounded by indications of messages from spirit, such as ravens, rainbows, and those runes that I mentioned earlier. These are simply indications that in my newly acquired quiet state, I can receive valuable information from my guides. I also like to use this downtime to question my assumptions. I often suggest that one should question everything they have been told, and especially those things that they are most certain. Take a moment and imagine yourself in my position. How would that change your view of your world? Well, I can tell you it's quite a change. Turning your world upside down, reversing some old beliefs, and gaining a new understanding of yourself opens your divine power to change. I have set an example for you to follow, and I'm here to offer support for your most personal and powerful dreams. I am sometimes associated with the Hebrew letter Mem, which means seas, and also with the rune Tyr, which means god of war, and my planetary attribution is Neptune. When we work on our alignment with spirit, it is sometimes necessary to shake up the snow globe, as it were. Dr. Wayne Dwyer was famous for saying, when we change the things we look at, the things we look at change. I think we've all experienced looking for an address while approaching it from a different direction than normal. Nothing is in its proper place. Everything seems to be mixed up from our last attempt to look for this address. This is where I live in a constant state of discovery and initiation. So you could think of it as chaos, or you could think of it as a state of discovery. I don't allow myself the comfort of falling back on old beliefs and societal norms and pressures to conform to everything else that's going on in this world. In fact, I would find that kind of an existence rather boring and uneventful. I would much rather be seeing the world unfold for me in new ways with new adventures ahead. My positive side brings personal discovery and development. One of my neighbors here in the major Arcana frequently talks about the constant movement of life and how nothing is ever stagnant, and I'm here to celebrate that fact and offer some suggestions as to making sense of what can sometimes be very chaotic. Like all my fellow major Arcana cards, I do come with some warnings. Remember, this hanging position is only temporary. It is not a permanent place to live. Sometimes we get so comfortable being a student that we fail to apply the knowledge gained. And that is just a waste of time. I come along at those times when it appears that all available options have been exhausted, when it seems that every resource has been expended. I step forward to remind you that the situation did not always look this way, and to remind you that only you can change the way this situation looks right now. I am here to bring your attention back to those times when you were called upon to shake things up and turn your world upside down. You know, when an artist is painting a portrait and using a photograph as a guide, they will often have both images, both the photograph as well as the portrait they are actually painting. They'll have them both turned upside down. This eliminates any assumptions about what should be there and allows the artist to copy only what they see. All the shadows, all the highlights, all the colors and textures. And they're copied accurately without involving the mind's preset rules about, oh, well, I should, or that should be there, or this is in the wrong place. They're not concerned with that. When you begin to see things my way, you quickly understand that I am not confined by my position. I am rather released by it. Though I may find myself physically restrained, my mind is free from old beliefs and presumptions. My energy is positive and encouraging and available to use whenever you feel imprisoned by circumstance. I am here to excite your explorer energy. I am here to show you that there is always a new perspective from which to assess your position. And that is the story of the Hanged Man. In our second segment of the Oracle Scroll, we take an issue of current interest and apply a spiritual interpretation to it, perhaps. And since the publication date for this episode is June 19th, we're getting close to July 4th and Independence Day. A great deal is made of independence these days. We have movements in many nations. America first, Britain first, basically setting themselves apart and assuming that they can be independent, truly independent of each other, ignoring the fact that we're all connected and we're all interdependent. So I'm going to talk today about Interdependence Day, not Independence Day. A few weeks ago, I was cleaning out a drawer filled with old photos and other reminders of the past when I uncovered a long-forgotten journal spanning a year's events. It dated from about 25 years ago, when I had just begun to awaken spiritually. It brought back many memories. Happy, sad, frustrating, at times exhilarating. I was instantly reminded of old relationships and friendships which have fallen victim to time and distance. In the pages I had written so long ago, I found references to my first attempts to connect to spirit and the beginnings of a meditative practice which now seems really rather clumsy. Reading this account of my early days of becoming aware of my spiritual path reminded me of the many subsequent teachers and others who have contributed in some great or even small part to my advancement. It all made me realize just how important each step in the process and each teacher in our lives are to our ultimate enlightenment. How many times have I gained valuable insights and direction from those I've met in passing? How many times have I been able to assist another without even being fully aware of it? The last couple of months, the lessons I have been seeing are those relating to forgiveness. And this month continues in that related vein. As our nation prepares to celebrate its independence with picnics and fireworks, and we're reminded of the importance of our culture and how much value is placed on independence. There's always a lot of admiration for that lone wolf. The CEO is always lauded as if solely responsible for the success of the enterprise. But when things go wrong, there are several underlings to be blamed. As I contemplate this vision of independence and going it alone, I'm humbled to realize that none of us can truly be independent if we want to be fully awakened in a spiritual sense. We are all connected and dependent upon each other, and with all energy throughout the universe. We need to open fully to the interdependence of all energy to become fully aware and awakened spiritually. Throughout our lives, we will encounter many teachers. Some will be those with whom we contract for a certain lesson, or many lessons, and others will be the people we meet in the market or at the local coffee shop. Some will be highly trained and educated in a particular specialty. Others will be those who deliver our mail or even read our utility meters. Recognizing this interdependence requires respect for all, regardless of social status or economic achievement. Living as if anyone we meet could be our next great teacher means that we have to be aware of all those we encounter. We can't take anybody for granted anymore. Opening to the oneness that is our universal home requires us to be constantly open to receiving instruction, and just as importantly, to remain open to the opportunities to impart a lesson to those we meet. We are all presented with many situations which will accent our differences, but it takes a bit more responsible control to promote the strength we gain from remaining connected to all that empowers us. So, as we approach the month of July and far beyond, as we enjoy the long awaited summer weather and the opportunity to relax with family and friends, take a few moments to reflect on the lessons to be learned and taught. And remember to remain interdependent with all that is, and draw strength from all the energy which makes up this universe of ours. Happy Interdependence Day. In our third and final segment of the Oracle Scroll, we often take questions from audience members and draw some tarot cards to offer guidance. Today, however, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what it means to me to be a tarot consultant and why it's so important in my life. So first, I guess I thoroughly enjoy that opportunity to offer tarot consultations at holistic events. It's a very personal way to connect with others, and it offers great rewards to myself and my clients. It took me many years to become comfortable with the idea of reading for others. I had worked with various means of divination for several years in private, but it wasn't until, several years later that I was coaxed to just bring your deck and sit at my table and see what happens. That's in quote, just bring your deck and sit at my table. What happened was a client came in to the small fair we were working and walked directly to me and said, "I think I want to have a reading with you." Immediately, my ego stepped up and gave me several reasons I should not be doing this, but fortunately, I was able to ignore that voice and get on with the task at hand. I still remember the tremendous rush that came from that first validation and the feeling of offering comfort and answers to my client. I was hooked. I had found a part of myself that had just been waiting to manifest, and I still find reading for clients to be one of my favorite activities. For whatever reason, I tend to do a lot of readings for first-timers. I don't know why. Those who have never sat for a reading before, and they don't really know what to expect or how to accept what might come through. So I, first of all, work to make sure that my client is as comfortable as possible, and I emphasize to them the importance of not making any assumptions about the meanings of any cards. Let me read them first. There are a lot of misconceptions out there which are reinforced by Hollywood and other forms of media. So those who have no frame of reference can come to a reading with a lot of dubious information, which will cloud their perception of the work. Most of the time, once a reading is completed, it's forgotten. I don't retain any of that. Once the message is delivered, there's no further need for me to keep a copy. But occasionally, one or two will carry such a distinct and important message that nearly every card will be committed to memory. Most readers will say that they have ways of calculating the accuracy of their message. Sometimes it's a physical reaction, or a particular card or group of cards will validate the message. I often find that in the process of interpreting the cards, a certain word will jump out and will be repeated in my mind, and it is often the key to the reading. Sometimes a client is unwilling to face the truth about the situation, and this can lead to some confusion. Sometimes the cards seem to have a mind of their own, and it seems they want to talk about something entirely different than the client's question. I find these challenges to be part of the fun, and often only means that there was an aspect of the situation that was previously escaping the attention of that client. It is my belief that when a client sits for a reading, they already know the question and they already know the answer. What they want from me is validation and confirmation to move forward with facing the situation as they've already decided they will. When a client affirms that the reading is accurate and that I have also picked up other information that surrounds the question, they bring so much of their own energy into the work of solving their dilemma. Some readers prefer to avoid questions about jobs and relationships and other day-to-day subjects, but I find that these questions often are just masking other much deeper concerns, which may be troubling that client. In other words, I never trust that the question that I am given is the real reason for the reading. I once did a reading for an individual whose question was all about money, future security. So you'd expect that that reading would be heavy with coins or swords, but instead the layout presented with a couple of trumps and an abundance of cups. Cups are all about emotions and relationships, so at first take it looks like a miss in addressing that question. That is until we uncovered that the question revolved around money problems involving legal action being taken by a relative and a close friend. Another interesting thing I've noticed is that some days the readings will have a similar tone to them. This can be due to astrological influences, which affect large portions of the population at the same time. I once worked in an event where I felt like I had a difficult message for nearly every client that day. They were all validated, and several weeks later I had an opportunity to speak to two of my clients from that day, and they were able to verify that the reading had been accurate and helpful. I always approach a reading from a compassionate and empathic place. There is no question that is too trivial or too superficial to ask. I respect the guidance I receive and feel a tremendous charge when I'm able to deliver a message of hope, love, healing. Our events provide access to many readers, healers, all of which will offer a unique and personal approach. We always encourage the guests to move through the event and see which practitioner seems to call to them. We believe firmly that intuition is the best guide when seeking a reader, teacher, or healer. I feel very alive and energized when I am reading the tarot. I find the messages that I receive personally to be very helpful to myself, and I value the opportunity to share those insights. I hope I will have the opportunity to read for you at an upcoming event soon. This concludes episode 15 of the Oracle Scroll, and I want to thank you very much for joining us, and please share the word. Make sure that all your friends, anyone who might be interested in listening to our broadcast, has the opportunity. And today, just now, I got information that we are on Spotify after weeks and weeks of delay. So you can get us on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook. I got you covered. So please spread the word, and thanks for listening. Watch for episode 16 coming up soon. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Oracle Scroll. Find us on Facebook at the Oracle Scroll. If you wish to send comments, suggestions, or requests, please address them to theoraclescroll@gmail.com.